What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 9 top 18 tight end rankings. If you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe, check out all the other rankings for the other positions if you guys are interested. But let's dive right into Tier 1 here. And I think the elite tight end ones are looking pretty solid. Definitely a sketchy start to the season, but we do have some quality options in here. So we're going to start off. My tight end 1 is going to be Brock Bowers going up against the Bengals, just continuing a very, very impressive rookie season. He's the current tight end 2 in points per game, only behind George Kittle, who's currently on bye. In his last 5 games, he is averaging 17.5 PPR points per game. So he's been balling out. He's had a very high weekly floor, also flashing that ceiling. He's my tight end 1 this week. My tight end 2 is going to be Travis Kelce going up against the Buccaneers. Best game of the season was in week 8. 10 receptions for 90 yards and a touchdown. He has put up 15 plus PPR points in 3 of his last 4. So it looks like he's starting to figure some things out here, or at the very least, they're just kind of force feeding him the ball. They're, being more reliant on him than they were early on in the season. It's a nice matchup here against the Buccaneers. Chiefs are going to put up points against this defense. I think he is a very strong play. Then I'm going to have Trey McBride going up against the Bears. He is also coming off his best game in week 8. 9 receptions for 124 yards. He is the tight end 3 in points per game, and he's only gotten into the end zone a single time, so he has not had that touchdown upside, but the volume has been there. He's had a high weekly floor, especially in your PPR leagues, so Trey McBride, very strong option. And then the final guy in this tier is going to be David Njoku going up against the Chargers. With Jameis Winston, he's been balling out. He had the big game in week 7. Week 8, 5 for 61 and a touchdown. Njoku has the talent. He just needed the quarterback play. We saw it last year with Joe Flacco. Now he's going to have Jameis Winston slinging it around. As long as Winston can stay healthy, David Njoku is going to be a stud moving forward. Now my tier 2 is actually just going to be a one-man tier. It is going to be Evan Ingram going up against the Eagles. Now I was someone who was fine drafting Evan Ingram, didn't get a ton of shares of him, thought maybe he was going a round or two early. And my concern was that a lot of his production, pretty much the vast majority of his big games in 2023, came when Christian Kirk was not in the lineup. So if Christian Kirk is healthy and playing, I didn't think Evan Ingram had the ceiling that maybe other people thought he had. But now Christian Kirk is out, and this is going to be Evan Ingram's time here. There were 6 games in 2023 where Evan Ingram played without Christian Kirk. In those 6 games, Trevor Lawrence was peppering him with targets, the volume was insane, and he was averaging 19.3 PPR points per game. So not the largest sample size, but 6 games, it's a pretty solid sample size if we're being honest here. So I think with Christian Kirk out, Evan Ingram definitely takes a huge bump up, and if he goes out, we see the volume I'm expecting, then he'll probably be a tier 1 option rest of season. Obviously, this isn't the same Jaguars offense, probably not as productive as they were last year. Seems like they're going to be sellers here at the trade deadline, but I still think Evan Ingram, massive riser here moving forward. Now, tier 3, a pretty large tier. We're going to start off with Kyle Pitts going up against the Cowboys. Week 8, 4 receptions, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. A lot of these tight ends had season best games in week 8. Kyle Pitts has put up 10 plus points in his last 4 games, started to find some consistency. The volume has been there. I believe he has 60 plus receiving yards in all of those last 4 games. And then also a fine matchup here against the Cowboys. Falcons should be able to put up points here. Like him as a tier 3 play. Then after Kyle Pitts, I'm going to have Cade Otton. And admittedly, I was too low on Cade Otton last week. I typically hesitate to launch these players up my rankings when they're getting pushed up just by expected target volume, because you see some of these Bucs wide receivers, right? Evans, Godwin go down. If they're not talented enough, they're not going to step in and dominate for fantasy or dominate from a real life perspective. But Cade Otton definitely proved he has some juice, a talented player. Goes 9 for 81 and 2 touchdowns. He has 10 targets in back-to-back games. Now, the problem here is this is not a great matchup against the Chiefs. The Bucs, I believe, are bottom 4 in implied points, but I still think with the volume we've seen and then just the back-to-back strong performances, he deserves his respect here. After Cade Otton, I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft. Now, this is going to be assuming that Jordan Love is playing. If it is Malik Willis at quarterback, Tucker Kraft probably gets bumped, honestly, maybe even into tier 4. I just don't think the passing volume is going to be there. But if it is Jordan Love, this is where Tucker Kraft would slide in here. 12 plus PPR points in 4 of his last 5 games. He doesn't have the highest volume floor, but he's clearly a touchdown threat. He's a big play threat. And on this offense, if they're putting up points, he's going to be a strong fantasy play, just operating as the clear-cut tight end one. Then after Kraft, going to go with Jake Ferguson going up against the Falcons. Not a great game against the Falcons in terms of his yardage to not get into the end zone, but he has been targeted 7 or more times in 4 of his last 5 games. So the volume has been there. I do think better games are going to be ahead for Ferguson. Then we have Sam Laporta going up against the Packers. He's starting to show some life here. In a game where the Lions had very little passing volume, Sam Laporta still had 6 receptions for 48 yards and a touchdown. Hopefully this is the start of a turnaround here, and he's not just this super low volume touchdown play, which is pretty much what he's been early on this season. And then the final guy in this tier is going to be Cole Kmet going up against the Cardinals. Cole Kmet has been pretty much boom or bust this season. He has 2 games with 24 plus points, and then he has 5 games with under 10. So the floor hasn't been great, but he's still, somewhat of a top weapon on this offense. I think it's a decent matchup here for the Bears. So Cole Kmet, back end tight end 1 play. Now looking at my tier 4, going to start off this tier with Zach Ertz going up against the Giants. Ertz has really emerged as a fairly productive tight end. Seems like he just keeps hanging around on these teams, giving you decent production. Week 8, 11 targets, 7 receptions for 77 yards. He has put up 10 plus PPR points in each of his last 3 games. So someone who deserves some respect here, and I think is playable as a fringe tight end 1 option. Then I have Mark Andrews going up against the Broncos. Now Mark Andrews has 3 very strong games back to back to back, 14 plus points in those last 3. I am still a little bit concerned, and I don't think it's super sustainable. We have seen that when they're in trailing game scripts, if they're losing, he does get a higher route participation, which is fun, but you can't really bank on that a ton. This is a very good Ravens offense. And then even over the last few weeks, he's kind of just been hitting in the touchdown department, which that potential was always there within his role. It's the volume that's the concerning part. So last 3 games, he has 4 touchdowns, but on the season, he is still maxed out at 5 targets, 66 receiving yards. So really not much has changed. You can still plug and play him as that touchdown upside guy, but I don't think just his points over the last 3 games are really indicative of what we're going to see moving forward. After Mark Andrews, going with Dalton Kincaid. And kind of unfortunately for Kincaid here, I think he's kind of settled into a similar spot with Mark Andrews, where his route participation is not all that great. He's not going to be a high volume option. He's going to be a fine tight end on a good offense who could potentially get into the end zone. He's the tight end 16 in points per game, around where I have him ranked here. Then also in tier 4, going to go with Dalton Schultz going up against the Dolphins. Now, I was very low on Dalton Schultz heading into the season. I was looking at this offense. We had Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. At best, Dalton Schultz was going to be the number 4 target. I was not interested in that. But, this has been about as good of a layout as you can get for Dalton Schultz moving forward, right? He has been completely unproductive this season, but you have no Nico Collins this week. You have no Stephon Diggs rest of season. His week 8 was the best game of the season. Not really saying a ton, but 4 receptions, 52 yards. Someone who could command some volume here in week 9. And then the final guy in tier 4, it's going to be TJ Hawkinson. I'm not overly optimistic about Hawkinson, in this second half of the season, coming off the torn ACL. But, he was obviously a top tier tight end last year for fantasy, on a good offense, higher end tight end too. I think if you can sell him with the idea that people are expecting the production we saw last year, I 100% would. But I would just temper my expectations if you're holding on to him, getting ready to play him this week. And then the final tier, tier 5, guess I'm going to go Will Dissly as my tight end 17. This would be if Hayden Hurst does not play, but with Hayden Hurst out, he has 18 total targets in the last 2 weeks. Obviously not an elite level tight end, but Herbert's been kind of feeding him here. And then my tight end 18 is going to be Hunter Henry. Now this is going to be assuming that Drake May does not play. If Drake May does play and is healthy, Hunter Henry would be somewhere in tier 3. And I'd honestly probably say he's in that Ferguson, Laporta area. In the 2 games with Drake May, he's put up 13.1 and 17.2 PPR points. Then just another couple of notes here. Dallas Goedert dealing with that hamstring injury. Didn't rank him. We'll see if he can play this week. If he does play, probably the Zach Ertz area. His backups kind of, filled in nicely. So I don't know if he's going to step back into great usage right away. And then an honorable mention to Taysom Hill. If Taysom Hill has Derek Carr at quarterback. If Carr's playing, I think it definitely, raises the ceiling of this offense. definitely increases Taysom Hill's touchdown upside, which is why you would be playing him. But that's going to wrap it up for my top 18. If you guys enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe. Check out the other weekly rankings if you haven't seen them already. But thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.